Hi, and welcome to a new training installment called The Waco Way. Let me give a brief introduction as to the goals and purpose of this new training installment. The purpose of this new training installment will be to address a wide range of topics, everything from fire size ups to tips and tricks, but more importantly, everything presented in this training venue will be gathered from the experience and expertise of members within our own department. That way, any information provided in this training installment can be applied practically, instantaneously, because the calls and experience and information presented will be coming from our members, riding on our rigs, under our command structure, using our equipment. My goal for this training installment is to tap into an undervalued and underutilized resource, and that is our department members. Their experience, their working knowledge of real calls gone to and worked through within the City of Waco. As you'll see in this first video, the data collected from these face-to-face interviews can prove to be beneficial in either affirming tactics we're already using or prompt us to reevaluate strategies and tactics we're using and what we may implement in the future when faced with similar situations. That out of the way, let's get into our first video of the installment, The Waco Way, Civilian Rescue. Civilian rescue is without question one of the most crucial functions of our job on any emergency scene, and that is why I've chosen to cover it. Of the first-hand accounts I received, I obtained both positive and negative outcomes on calls. Positive being those in which the victim survived the fire event, and negative being the ones in which they did not. I wanted to do this to see if I could compare and contrast the data and see if there's anything within the data set that points to why some outcomes are successful and some are not. The data that was collected for this video and that will later be provided was gained via face-to-face interview with members who were able to give first-hand accounts of the calls in which they encountered victims in a structure fire. While there were many lessons to learn from hearing these first-hand accounts, one of the largest was getting to understand the weight that some of our members carry for having been involved in these calls. And it's for that reason I chose to make this video so we could take our members' experiences, learn from them, and not have their experiences be in vain, and better ourselves and pick up our members in the process. That being said, let's hear some of our first-hand accounts.
The alarm went off for a residential structure fire.
I was assigned to Engine 6.
We were at Central Station. We were out of territory, dropping off papers.
While we were responding, we were told that it was a confirmed entrapment.
We showed up second on. We had reports that there was somebody still in the house, didn't know where, had no information about that.
Seen heavy fire immediately on the Alpha side.
There was heavy fire showing from the A side.
We were going to end up dropping tank water, and that me and the firefighter would go out for rescue.
Gentleman that was outside with some kids that he said his daughter was still inside and she was in the right bedroom.
He was yelling that someone was trapped inside.
About that time, I just did a quick glance, shut the door, but it wasn't until after I'd shut the door that I recognized that I'd heard somebody coughing somewhere inside the house. I couldn't tell how far back.
Busted in the door, went in, heavy smoke conditions.
And to do a quick search, right-hand search.
We were probably 15, 20 feet in. I remember getting to that room very quickly.
Went inside, and maybe it couldn't have been more than, I'd say, 15 feet.
And he's searching, and it's loud, and you couldn't see anything. And it's already starting to get hotter.
Let Darren know at that point that we did have a victim. He come just inside to help me get her out of the house. And
So we immediately ran over, tried to wake her up. She wouldn't wake up. She was unresponsive.
You know, verbal communications, that was not going to be an option to take her back down where we came.
Went to the Delta apartment, and then that's whenever we found somebody about 2 rooms deep inside that apartment, somewhat barricaded in. Again, smoke conditions getting worse.
There was another, we continued our search, we found another individual around the corner.
Just basically ran into each other. He was crawling on the ground. I was crawling on the ground. We bumped into each other. He kind of fell. So I grabbed him and pulled him out.
At that point, another engine company had already arrived on scene, was inside with us, and the 4 of us picked her up and removed her from the structure.
And probably as soon as we set the non-rebreather on her face, she came around.
this was just one of those instances that everything worked out the way it should, and with our training and all of that, and we were able to make a save.
As an officer, you know, taking the time to build individuals up on a professional basis of consistent training, debriefing, and building on scenarios.
When you're asking the person in the front yard that's telling you there's somebody inside, take another second or two to make sure they give you a little bit more detailed of their floor plan, if they can, if you can get them to concentrate enough on that.
If we had waited, there's a good chance that the series of events that occurred would have been just too late.
And that's kind of how the rescue went. It just kind of, things fell into place. And we got a little bit of luck, and maybe we knew what we were doing.
I think everybody's part in that, from the firefighter to the engineer, lieutenant, all knowing their job in that moment, probably has a huge impact on the fact that we were able to rescue this lady.
That particular day, we had everybody on board and everybody was working as a team. And to me, that's what Waco Fire Department's all about.
It's hard to stop, once the ball's in motion and you're trying to make entry. You've heard the voices, the cries for help. It's hard to just sit back and not make an effort.
So now let's take a closer look at the information gained. The data pulled was from 20 first-hand accounts, 12 positive, 8 negative. These were the metrics that the accounts were subjected to. So we have positive outcomes, negative outcomes, the corresponding address, time of year, time of day, known versus unknown, the order in which the crew that found the victim arrived on scene, conditions on arrival, exterior, points of ingress, visibility inside measured in feet, type of search conducted, did the crew call out to the victim while interior, did they hear anything from the victim location, distance from the point of ingress, the point of egress in which they took the victim out, and distance from the location of the victim to that point of egress. I'm not going to cover the findings in length on this video, but I do want to highlight some key takeaways from each of the categories. For one, on the positive end, every incident except for one, the victim was located by the first or second arriving unit. Another interesting finding within the positive data set was that every victim except for one was located inside 20 feet from the point of ingress of the crew that located the victim. On the negative side of the data sample, there were equally interesting findings. For example, 62.5% of the victims found that had a negative outcome were found at a distance greater than 20 feet from the point of ingress by crews that found the victim. And when comparing things like conditions on arrival, as well as visibility inside, it's easy to see that within the negative data set, fire conditions were allowed to deteriorate for a much longer period of time prior to fire unit arrival. But perhaps one of the most insightful findings is that within the entire data set, all 20 first-hand accounts, 75% of victims were found inside bedrooms. Now, I must be clear, this is not an exhaustive list. I undoubtedly did not talk to every one of our members who have come across a victim inside of a structure fire. So, that being said, it is good to take these numbers and project them and see what they look like against a larger data set. Firefighter Rescue Survey is a national database that pulls the same metrics from fire departments across the country in order to do the same thing we're doing in this video, to see if there's any similarities between positive and negative outcomes. And when you measure the outcomes that we found within our own department up against the national averages, some pretty stark similarities start to pop up. For example, survivability percentages of victims found by either the first or second in unit are 70%. Compare that to victims found by the third or fourth in unit at a 47.5%. Another positive correlation is looking at victim location. When you look at the national numbers, 45% of victims reported are found in a bedroom. That is a far way away from second place being the family room, with only 16% of victims found in that location. Now, the big question is, what do these numbers mean? And let me be clear, I want you to make that determination as far as what they mean for you and your specific crew. Now, on its face, what we can infer from the data is that we have got to flood the house with resources from our first and second in machines, and we've got to be able to locate bedrooms quickly. And what does that look like practically? Well, the data can affirm tactics we already use, such as reverse lays and dumping tank water. It can also emphasize the importance of being able to effectively size up houses and use classical signs like windows and vent openings to determine possible interior layouts to get us and our crews into bedrooms faster. Again, I want to reiterate that this data is yours. Take it and discuss it amongst your crew. Does it affirm things you're doing? Or because of it, do you look at things and see that you could possibly do them in a better way. That's its intended purpose, and that's what I hope to gain from this. I want to give a special thanks to the contributors of the data as well as the interviews. The benefit I gained from hearing these firsthand accounts is something that cannot be understated. And that's going to conclude this episode of The Waco Way. Remember, be smart and stay aggressive.